Okay, Allie, this is a safe space. Have you ever worried that one of your sons is a killer? Going to be a future killer?
Sometimes it crosses my mind. Sometimes when I'm after a heated moment and I hear, the sassiness come out of one of the boys, I'm like, where is this going?
Right.
Is he going to be a good boy? Is he going to grow up to be a good human?
And it's hard because it's like, what do? You're going to call your pediatrician and be like, he gets really mad sometimes. Like, it's not a lot of places we could take that information,
And
right?
I don't want to tell anybody.
Do you know what we're talking about today specifically?
I don't.
You don't. And I did that on purpose. All right, we're going to talk about this violent murderer named Levi King. Does that ring a bell for you?
Somewhat. Tell me more.
Well, you're going to find out a lot more, but it might ring a bell for you because I actually interviewed him myself, and I probably told you about it, or you watched it on my show.
Probably.
I did it for ID, for the Mind of a Murderer, and talking to him was so terrifying because he was like cute, normal, like you would never in a million years know that this guy had done what he had done. And I'd been told by a producer on a different show who had talked to him that like it wouldn't hurt if I was a little flirty, which obviously goes against all like my professional ethics. But I need him to tell me things he hasn't told other people. Otherwise, I don't have a show. And if you want to understand a murderer, you got to get them talking and you have to have them. It's not just what they say, it's how they say it, because they're obviously talented liars. So you want them to trust you, but it was so sickening. Like, hey, it's so embarrassing too, because in the episode, I'm like coquettish and giggling like a little girl. And I was also really nervous, but it was, you can see that when you look at it in my face that I was like, especially since you know me.
I remember watching some of those and being so nervous for you.
Well, and I'll tell you more about, he ended up being behind glass, which is a story in and of itself. And I'll tell you about that when we get deeper into it. But before I get carried away, let's start with the most heinous crimes of Levi King, the ruthless murders that put him in prison for the rest of his life and led him to nearly getting the death penalty. Okay. It's September 2005. Levi's 23 years old, and he's forced to leave his father's house in Pineville, Missouri. He had been there for about a week after violating his parole terms and fleeing the halfway house he'd been assigned to in St. Louis. And there's a story about that. So after he waits for his father to leave in the morning, Levi grabbed a bunch of his dad's guns without him knowing. And this began a tragic killing spree that would soon leave 5 innocent victims who Levi either didn't know or hardly knew. So it was very random, and they're particularly tragic, and we'll get to that. But this was not the plan all along. Levi had stolen the guns because he was going to sell them because he had no money. He'd just gotten out of this halfway house for a different crime. And he's like, okay, these guns are worth something. So he took them. Anyway, he's walking down the back roads with like a backpack full of guns in Missouri, like a really not very well populated area of Missouri, since I can't say rural. And he says to me that at that moment, a lot of the rejection from his childhood starts bubbling back up again. I don't know if I believed it, but this is what he says happened and what led to what happens next. After wandering for a few miles and feeling like stressed and confused about where to go and what to do, and he knows he's screwed legally because he literally he's supposed to be at the halfway house. He got released from prison. He's in the custody of the halfway house. He's out doing work and he bails, so he knows he's busted. And he's just confused, and he's thinking these things as he comes up the home of this 70-year-old local guy. It's a business owner in his town. Levi does not know him, but he recognizes him from just being around the town. It's the 70-year-old named Orly McCool. And just at that exact moment, just coincidentally, Orly and his 47-year-old daughter-in-law, Dawn McCool, are leaving the house. And they're heading to the grocery store in one car, but Levi doesn't know where they're going. He sees that there's a second vehicle, so he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to break into this house, steal some stuff, and steal that car, which is obviously going to be much easier for him to get around, but also more stuff to sell, and it's harder to sell guns. And he thinks he's being logical. But as he's rummaging through everything, Orly and Dawn surprise him by returning home super quickly. And so he hides in the closet, and now he's like, oh my God, I've already violated my parole, now I'm in a closet. And he said that several things went through his mind, and he was trapped in the house. And he starts talking about how up until that moment, he was, angry for everything happened to him. He was dejected about how he had nowhere to go legally, felt like a trapped animal. But it wasn't the McCools who trapped him. He trapped himself. And in our interview, he said that the crime he was about to commit was just something he acted on, which to me, it's like, okay, I mean,
Like just impulse?
yeah, just like, it's a Wednesday, I'm going to kill someone. So he gave Orly no time to react. He busts out of the closet, he raises his 9mm gun and shot him dead. And then Levi's like, okay, I have to kill Dawn, his daughter-in-law. She'd just seen her father-in-law be murdered. So he shot her, but he could tell he hadn't killed her. And so he just rapid shots, boom, 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 just to make sure she's dead. So already it's not like I'm shooting you and I'm running away. I'm making sure you're dead. So at this point in my interview, he confessed to me that, and this is important later, the minute he committed those murders, he felt more relief than he had ever felt in his life.
Whew.
So a normal person, right, it's not relief, it's fear. What have I done?
Like, yeah, exactly.
And he went on to say that the killing made him feel almost content. Okay, so he says, all the worries that I felt after I left my father's house simply vanished. I entered a euphoric state. So you and I have talked about this a lot, and we'll get into it, but that high, that rush that he's describing is critically important when we talk about how not to raise a serial killer, because it's something you can see very early on and there's treatment for it. So we'll dive into that in a bit. But let's get back to the crime. At this point, he took off in Orly's truck and he just kept driving until the rush and mental calm that had occurred to him after his first killings began to leave him. And I asked him about that. I said, were you like, I just killed 2 people? And he said, no, I was just, driving. I was just driving, enjoying the rush. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, he was talking to me like he'd just, gone skydiving and it was really exciting for him. So he drove 400 miles from Missouri to the Texas Panhandle, and soon he was feeling the need to have that euphoria again, like a drug, like that he's coming off the euphoria and he wants to bump it back up. So as it dawned on him that he would need to feel it again, he sees this dark farmhouse in the outskirts of Pampa, Texas. And I've seen this area. I went there. There's nothing there. It's just like farmhouse, and then miles and miles and miles, and then another farmhouse. It's not a lot going on. It was less than 24 hours since Levi had killed his first 2 victims that he approaches the home of Michelle and Brian Conrad. And in it are also her 2 kids from a previous marriage, 14-year-old Zach and 10-year-old Robin. Plus, Michelle's 6 months pregnant with another child at the time. I know. And the entire family's asleep. So he goes to a side door of the Conrad house. He kicks it open. He flips on the lights. Michelle, when you're pregnant, you don't sleep at all. She's the first one. She pops up, and he blows her away.
Oh, I think I remember this.
Yeah. Oh, you do? Okay, it's ringing a bell. Then, obviously, her husband wakes up, so he kills him as well. Then he flipped off the light and stomped through the rest of the house just to make sure he'd left nobody alive. And that's when 10-year-old Robin Doan, the daughter, she had awoken to the sound of the gunshots, and she's like cowering by the door in her bed. And he opens the door, and I know how this transpired. She jumps, like literally leaps back into her bed, and he fires a shot at her, like a little girl. She's 10.
Yeah.
So then he enters Zach's room. Zach doesn't wake up. Zach's not awake, and Levi blows him away. After all of this killing was through, Levi admitted to me that he did not feel that same rush the second time around. But it still was a sense of relief and contentment, just not as much as the first, which reminds me of people who do like heroin. You're always chasing the dragon. You never get that high again.
Right.
But what do? You still keep trying.
Right.
So
you're chasing the high.
Oh my God, he's a spree killer at this point, but this is a serial killer in the making.
And this was within 24 hours
24
after?
hours.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours.
Wow.
He even started rifling through the family's photos and mail. And I was like, why are you going through their stuff, weirdo? Like, you already blew them away.
Yeah.
And he was trying to feel something because he felt
connection.
nothing. Connection. Okay. Who were they? To kind of up the excitement, the feeling of it. Nothing. He just wanted to feel something. So, yeah, he's getting something out of it, but it wasn't as much. So he hops back into Orly's truck, the original guy he shot and stole, and he heads for the Mexican border. And he thought he had killed everybody in the house. But 10-year-old Robin was still alive. In fact, he missed her. He didn't hit her at all. She's not even injured.
Shot at the bed, didn't hit her at all.
Didn't hit her. She played dead for 2 hours, knowing he had shot everybody in the house because she heard it. And she was terrified he'd come back, obviously. So can you imagine our 10-year-old's like shivering in a bed for 2 hours. She finally, after the sun comes up, goes outside and calls 911. She was smart enough to leave the house. And she told, and I've heard this recording, I have chills right now. She told the operator, she said a lot of things about like, I don't know if my mom's dead, and all I want right now is my blanket and my pillow. I know, it's so heartbreaking.
Oh.
Robin was then rescued by the police. And I want to add something to this. We interviewed the policeman, and he said when he got there and he was trying to console her, he had a little girl, and he was obviously very upset. And she's like, will you help me do the feeding? And they went out and fed all the farm animals because she knew they needed to be fed. Her whole family's just been slaughtered. And the little girl went with the officer and fed the pigs and fed, I know, that one really got me.
Oh.
So she's rescued by the police. She couldn't describe the man who executed her family because she was playing dead and didn't see him. But it ramps up here because meanwhile, while this is happening, back in Missouri, Levi's dad called the police because he noticed his guns were missing. And he expressed concern to the police that he was worried his son would hurt someone, but that's not why he was calling the police. He was calling the police because he wanted his guns recovered because he's not the type of person who would care, as we will learn. So it's 10 in the morning after Levi's first murders, and Levi's first victims, the McCools, were discovered by a relative. They came in and saw the bodies. Police come to the scene, and they see Orly dead in a pool of blood, and then Dawn with multiple gunshots. It looked like she has defensive wounds, like she tried to stop the bullets with her hands. So I'll just let you sit with that image. The police decide it's an execution. The report from Levi's dad made it into the system right away. So when the police enter these bodies, Levi's name literally pops up. So this is going quickly. And they put an all points bulletin out for Levi. They quickly fingered him as the prime suspect, and Border Patrol agents caught him at the Mexican border.
That's insane.
Like how?
That's incredible.
How did that happen so fast?
Yeah.
Right?
Within
just like a day.
Yeah, within a day.
It was super quick. It doesn't always happen that way. So this is good because I know for a fact, okay, I can't know anything for a fact. I really, really, really believe he was just going to continue. And
keep going.
Keep going because he needs that rush, right?
Yeah.
All right. Levi's charged with the McCool killings in Missouri, but police in Texas didn't have any leads for the murders for the Conrad family, and they're not putting that together. So their local leads are all dead ends. But unexpectedly, it would be Levi himself who helped them solve the crime. He's in jail awaiting trial for the McCool killings, and he said to a policeman, there's 4 more victims, right? But he didn't give the police any more details. That says a lot about the guy. He doesn't doesn't want to get caught, but he also wants credit. And we see that a lot with killers. Sometimes they even make up people they haven't killed just because they want the
attention. Is it like the
attention and the
catch me if you can?
I did a podcast comparing serial killers, and one of the who killed at the same time in the same place, and there's audio recording of 2 serial killers arguing about which one of them had killed more. Oh. It's a competition. An internet search for unsolved crimes in surrounding states lead police to the Conrad farmhouse, and quickly they do a DNA connection, and they realize Levi committed both the McCool killings in Missouri and the Conrad killings in Texas. He's charged with all of the murders in both states. He pleaded guilty to the killings of Orly and Dawn McCool just to avoid trial in Missouri. But in Texas, he had to be tried in both places because he killed in both different states. He faced the death penalty in Texas. Now, we'll learn this as these podcasts go on, but Texas loves the death penalty. And I've been there over and over and over again to interview people. And it's a totally different way they view it down there. But he doesn't know at this point if he's going to get death penalty or life in prison. And he said to me, I appreciate my life now, which I don't quite understand. He said didn't know if it would be, we didn't know what he was going to get, and he didn't know which one he wanted. Because, the idea of spending the rest of your life in jail is not pleasant. But now he's happy that he didn't have it that he wasn't sentenced to death, because after 8 hours of deliberation, it was just one lone juror who refused to give Levi the death penalty.
Oh, wow.
On October 7th, 2009, Levi was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.